I did eat pumpkin pie, but I didn't have a dinner.
No, he's just
know.
waiting there.
I
Yep.
know. Yeah.
Yep.
And apple cider.
So we'll just adopt the agenda and then move on to the, yeah.
Here.
Let me say it. It was like the holiday.
Hey, you, Joe.
Ready? Okay, we're ready. All right, it's 5:15. Going to call the workshop to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Cole?
Here.
Councilmember Schwer?
Here.
Councilmember Wong?
Here.
Councilmember Nordby?
Here.
Mayor Mungy?
Here. Thank you very much. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
So moved.
So move. Councilmember Schwer.
Second.
Second, Councilmember Norby. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Start with our topics. Do you want to read our little thing on the way out the door?
Thanks, sir. We have two topics tonight. First one is going to be a closed meeting. The meeting will be closed as permitted to section 13D.03 to discuss the city's labor negotiation strategy related to the city's negotiations with Teamsters, the Teamsters Public Works, and Law Enforcement Employees Union, Local 320, which is Public Works and Electrical, Law Enforcement Labor Services, Local 211, which is Patrol, and Local 298, which is Sergeants.
All right. Do I need to move to motion to go to the, can I have a motion for closed? Councilmember Cole?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Wong. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We'll be back. password.
You did.
Do I have to adjourn back in, motion back in then, or
Open back up, yeah.
open back up? Open up the meeting at, you ready? 5:33, reopen the meeting. Do we need to vote on it, or are we good to go? Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Next topic, item B, is 2025 internal service funds and other budgets. I'll turn that over to Finance Director, Mr. Winnick.
Mayor, council members, thank you very much. Tonight, we're going to be going over the internal service funds. We have 5 of them, and then we're going to go over our other budgets. We have 5 of the other budgets, and I'll kind of describe each one of them and kind of give you a high overview. And then we have the privilege of having Ava here tonight, and she'll go through the event budget and what she has planned for the proposed 2025 budget. After tonight, we have gone through all of the budgets, and then what we'll have on the special will be the CIP, Capital Improvement Plan. We just recently got the facility assessment information, and we're still going through that and making some adjustments to that. We also got from the Park and Recreation Commission, they put together a CIP plan, so we're incorporating that within our CIP, which all of that will be presented to you on, I believe it's the 13th. So we'll do that. And then we still have to have a time where we go back and talk about where we want you know, the levy and the general fund to go, because obviously there's some changes with the union negotiations. We kind of left some options that we could reduce the levy, and there's also some options that have been discussed by a few of the council members of potentially adding different fees to our fee schedule, which will be coming up in November too, that may have an impact on the revenue sources for the city's budget. So I'll start here and kind of go through a high-level overview of the internal service fund and the other budgets. Internal service funds, you know, by definition, they account for the financing of goods and services provided by one department or agency to another department, so it's internal, and it's based on a cost reimbursement basis. And we have 5 of them: the information technology, the insurance internal service fund, equipment, city mechanic, and the building maintenance internal service fund. High-level information technology revenues are proposed for the 2025 of about $524,000. That's an increase of about $28,000 from 2024. The budget of $541,000, that's an increase of $45,000 from the 2024. The fund balance, based upon this, it's not a balanced budget, would decrease $17,000. The fund balance as the end of 2023 was $263,000, so we can afford to use some of the fund balance to balance this budget. The significant change here is once again, Metro INET services have increased approximately $44,000, or 13% from 2024.
Didn't we have a big increase the year before that?
We have had, and the year before that, you know, when they passed the budget, I went to the meeting and I had brought statistics. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think we've gone up something like, I don't know, it was unbelievable. I'll just say it was like 61% since in like 3 or 4 years. So I had it, so read it off the statistical information, so it was in their minutes, because that is something that, yeah, it's hard to believe, and that we keep getting those increases. One of the bigger increases I know last year was because we added, because of how they do their charges. They do it on connections, and we added all of our council members to have email access. And that's one of their driving factors of their charges, is they charge per user on the system. So that gave us last year a big increase. this year. You know, and we can remember what I said last year. You know, they're kind of anticipating that a lot of their contracts in the software are going to be going up like 10%. We're seeing the 13% increase on our side to it because we haven't added any users from last year to this year.
Is this the one where if somebody leaves, everybody has to absorb when they leave?
Yeah. I mean, their cost model is pretty much like that. In some of the meetings, they've kind of discussed, and they're currently going through a strategic planning process to it. But their model and what they've said is that their staffing level, they're pretty much maxed out. So adding additional customers wouldn't necessarily benefit them. They would end up having to add additional costs, but you're correct. If somebody drops out and they don't reduce their costs, they're shared amongst everybody else. One of the interesting pieces that they did show as far as, you know, using some sort of statistical data is that they took all of the participating cities that are in this, or, you know, in the Metro INET. They put what their percentage of the cost is, and they compared it to the percentage of use that that city utilizes. And it's very eerie because it matches up pretty well to what the cost model and the usage pretty much matches up across the board. So we're one of the higher users. We're in like the top, I think, 5 because we're that, you know, compared to the whole thing, we're about that big. We're 5th or 6th, and that's about our usage in comparison. Now they didn't give a breakdown of, you know, what department is creating, you know, that need or that you know, that service request, but it does line up pretty well with the overall cost component too. But yes, you're absolutely correct. If somebody were to leave, unless they were to reduce staff, the cost would be redistributed amongst everybody.
Okay, I was just like Councilmember Schwer, her business is HR, mine is technology. So I look at some of these numbers and compare what we do and different things like that, and it sometimes takes my breath away with the amount that
The
increases in what it's at, and having, you know, this many users and having a full person, you know, that's here quite a bit and that type of thing. Well, most stuff is, you know, can be done remotely. So I think that's something we need to look at and discuss and try to understand a little bit more how this is broken out. Thank you.
Then there's the insurance fund revenues of about $592,000. That's actually a decrease of 59, but that's kind of misleading decrease because if you remember last year, we had good results on our insurances. And we had a savings from what was projected in the budget, because if you remember the year before, we were with PEEP, and they went up 50%, and we went out for an RFP. We got out of that at the 50% part to it. So City Council made the decision not to reduce the expenditure side for all the departments for insurance, but to transfer it into the insurance fund, and that was about $125,000. The budget is $608,000. That's an increase of about $82,000. This would decrease our fund balance about $17,000. Our fund balance at the end of 2023 was $166,000. The significant change is on workman's compensation insurance. We've had a number of claims, and so it's driving our increase up, and we were a little bit underfunded for the 2024 budget. So underfunded in 24, and it's increasing again for the 2025. The equipment budget, internal service fund, the budget's $964,000. All of this information is incorporated into the capital improvement plan. What we have on equipment for the departments that are part of this equipment fund, there's the Freightliner pumper for the fire department. If you remember, the City Council authorized earlier this year to proceed with the purchase of that. So this is the remainder of that. I think the total is about a little under 800,000. The city council authorized them to start building it. There will be a payment coming in, I think, in November or December, about $260,000, and this is the remainder that would be after the total completion of the build for the Freightliner pumper. And there's a Bobcat Toolcat for Parks and Recreation. It's estimated at $87,000. There's body worn cameras for the police, $8,600. There's a blacktop roller for streets, $25,500, and then there's for streets there's a Ford F-750 estimated at $323,000. So that's what's being proposed to be expended as far as equipment. From the equipment fund, we generate revenues of about $537,000. Obviously, there's a decrease of $426,000. Yet the fund balance at the end of 2023 was $3.3 million. And in addition, we have $542,000 that's restricted for the public safety. So the intent is to utilize that $542,000 on that Freightliner pumper. So then we've met the criteria for the state of Minnesota on the public safety dollars that were given to us last year. And then there's a city mechanic. Now, the city mechanic position itself is actually allocated to all the departments that utilize the city mechanic. This budget is really just for their supplies that are not allocated to departments. It's a balanced budget of about $44,000, just a slight increase of $1,300 from the 2024. And the fund balance as the end of 2023 was $49,000. And then there's the building maintenance fund. It has revenues above $562,000. That's an increase of $68,000. The budget's $428,000. That's a decrease of $202,000. Now, with the building maintenance fund, significantly of why you're seeing that decrease of $202,000 is because there were some items that were in the CIP that were approved part of that, if you remember, from the last year. And so there's less requests that are in the CIP for the building maintenance. When we get into the CIP, what we're going to look at, my suggestion is to move capital expenditures, especially when you see some of the costs that are going to be coming for our facilities in the next 10 years. There is a different fund. There's an asset preservation fund that was established for preserving our assets, and I think really we should be utilizing that for our capital expenditures and this building maintenance just for the maintenance, truly maintenance type of items for our facilities. And so that's kind of how the budget's being set up. The fund balance here would increase $134,000. Fund balance at the end of last year was $143,000. That is all of our internal service funds, and then the other budgets that we budget and get approved by City Council are the community center fund, the community event fund, fire relief fund, park fund, and the street maintenance fund. And the community center fund was created in 2020, and it was to account for the costs and the revenues for the community center. You know, this 25 budget shows no rental revenue. It has $97,000 in operating costs. The fund balance at the end of 2023 was $166,000. However, this budget this year, again, because there's no revenue coming in, anticipated using about $87,000 of fund balance. If we combine the 97 and the 87, you can see we're going to use up all of our fund balance. So the budget has been set up with the establishment of transferring $20,000 from the general fund, so we at least we have enough money to pay for 24 and 25 budget until City Council's made a decision on what we're doing in the future of the community center. Community Event Fund, this is just a high-level picture of it. Ava will give more of the details of the event component of this. But the Community Event Fund is used to account for community events sponsored by the Arts and Culture Committee and the Park and Recreation Committee. In addition, it shows the expenditures and the revenues that are related to the North St. Paul Car Show. We estimate revenue of about $14,000, budget of about $29,000. 20 of that is what Ava will be talking about for some specific events. It utilizes fund balance of about $15,000. Fund balance at the end of 2023 was about $74,000. And we have the Fire Relief Fund. Fire Relief Fund's basically a pass-through fund. We receive fire state aid that ends up getting passed on to the Fire Relief Association. In this year, in 2024, between our regular and our supplemental, we received $98,000, which is actually a significant increase from what we had last year. Last year we were at about $84,000, so they increased, state aid. We also saw the increase in our police aid too that we received for 2024. And then there's the Park Fund. And the parks have really two kind of funds. One's a park dedication fund. We really don't utilize that unless there's a specific need for something that's new. But then there's the Park Fund that was created to finance capital improvements related to the park system. The funding was initially donation-driven, but has grown to include reservations for park facilities. And we estimate that at about $87,000. They get local government aid of $100,000, and then there's $75,000 in levy. Remember, we have a percent dedicated split between facilities and park, and so in 2025, the levy for parks would be $75,000. And then there's a transfer of approximately $65,000 for the debt payment related to the Casey Lake Pavilion. Projects that are included based upon the Park and Rec Commission was a total of $650,000. I think it's $500,000 for the McKnight Field parking and $150,000 for the West End Passive Park. And then there's the Street Maintenance Fund. And the Street Maintenance Fund provides funding for our pavement preservation, our pavement rehabilitation programs. This fund receives the annual state maintenance allocation of approximately $159,000, receives some local government aid of approximately $55,000. In 2025, there's a levy of $835,000 for the street maintenance. That was part of our 10-year plan. It'll go up and down based upon our debt to keep our debt levy component to it flat. The projects for 2025 include $105,000 for parks, playgrounds, and paths and open spaces, and that consists of $45,000 for improvements to the Gateway State Trail access, $60,000 for McKnight Boulevard sidewalk. It also includes $411,000 for pavement preservation, $210,000 for the Sepulveda parking lot between Margaret and Helen, and $100,000 for Sepulveda's corridor study. This year, coming out of this funds, that $1.1 million that was transferred from the electric fund, it's down this year because this 2025 will be the bonding year for the major reconstruction project, and then you'll see in 2026 where then we pick up more of the pavement rehabilitation program like we have going this year. And they're doing, and the plan that WSB had put together had that, I think, major reconstruction for 25, 27, 29, and then the other years are the pavement rehabilitation. And then after 2029, it appears at least through 2034 that it would be on the pavement rehabilitation program to it. But we've seen that 10-year look already with WSB's new numbers to try to raise our road rating up a little bit. But we'll have more of the discussion on that when we get into the CIP. So all of this information is also incorporated into the capital improvement plan that we'll be discussing next meeting. We'll see all of that information. So I'll take any quick questions, but then I want to give enough time for Ava to be able to go through events. I think since she started here, she's got all that energy. She's made some, and had some fantastic events for the city, and I think we're seeing the communication, really painting the city in a very positive light in which it should be. So I want to make sure that she has enough time to go through that. But I'll take any quick questions. If there's time after she's done, I certainly will take questions again after Ava has had an opportunity to present.
Any questions for anybody? If not, move on.
It's all yours, Ava.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here tonight.
Okay. Can you guys see this on your screen here?
Not yet.
I'm not sure if the mic's on.
Green button.
The green button is on. Okay. Great. Fantastic. Hello, Council. My name is Ava Greenert, and I'm in charge of the planning and implementing all city events. Today, I will be presenting the proposed 2025 event budget that is included in your packet. So I'll be highlighting the changes made to the way we plan and implement the events that affect this year's budget. And there will be time at the end of this presentation for questions. So on my first day here, I was told about all the great events that we used to host, like the Silver Lake Beach Party. I heard about the community coming out to enjoy time together and participate in local activity, and how people felt connected to the city in a way that is maybe missing now. Due to circumstances out of our control, the last few years have seen a slump in the number of quality city-run events. This is a missed opportunity to engage the community that we care so much about. We have some stellar ongoing events that I know will only get better with time, and I don't want to miss our chance to grow with them in our city. I believe that we can once again host events that create connections, foster community pride, and that are anticipated year after year. To support this trajectory, we need to have three things in place. First, the right funding. Second, thorough pre-planning. And third, city staff commission and support. This event budget is my plan to re-engage the city in a way that will build connections, get people excited to come back, and make residents feel proud to live here. So the proposed 2025 budget is different from the 2024 budget in three very distinct ways. So the first, major changes had to be made to the previous year's budget as it didn't work for 2024 and will not work for 2025. Highlighted in red on the budget labeled Edits to the 2024 event budget in your packet are items that were either overestimated, events that we don't contribute city funds to run or participate in, events that should have been included in the budget but were not, or were underestimated in their projected cost. Because the 2024 budget was an unreliable guide, this year's event budget has major changes to both the event list and to the cost of the events. The proposed budget is a more accurate picture of what we actually pay for and what it will take to run these events. Second, I have assigned a commission to each of the proposed events to help with the day-to-day with the event setup, as well as their involvement in the planning process. As the event coordinator, I will be more active in working to get the commission's input, ideas, and to create events that we can be excited to help host. So I'll be planning and managing and implementing these events, but I definitely need a team of dedicated people who know what is going on during the event to help me pull them off. I cannot make these events happen without the support of the commissions, as one person cannot successfully run large-scale events by themselves. I'm requesting your approval to designate our various commissions as team leaders for our events leading up to and on the day of the events. This will ensure that everything runs smoothly and is a win for our commissions, as the event will be an extension of what their commission is already passionate about. And lastly, I've added a no funds required section to the events budget. As we participate in several events throughout the year that do not require city funds, but do impact city staff and staff time and resources. I will need your approval to continue to pursue these events, noting that they will not financially impact this year's budget. So with these changes approved, I can confidently pull off the proposed event lineup outlined in the budget that you have. I know we have the drive, motivation, and resources needed to make next year's events ones to look forward to. But to make these events happen, I need you to first approve this budget, second, agree to mobilize your commissions to help aid in city event efforts, and 3, sign off on our no events required list. With these 3 things in place, we'll be able to build connections, make people excited to come to our city, and have residents feel proud to live here through our amazing city events. So please let me know if you have any questions about the funds needed to make the upcoming events list a reality, or the addition of the commissions. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to working with you and your commissions more closely in the future. Any questions?
Yep, thanks for your presentation. A lot of great events, and really appreciate you just jumping right into all of them. I'm wondering kind of what the feedback was with some of the commissions and the designated events, and what that conversation was like.
Yeah, so we haven't had it yet. This was something that I brought up to the city manager, that when I was running some of these events in the summer, for example, the outdoor movie night, I was doing it alone, and I couldn't be in 2 places at once, and I desperately needed to. And so it was brought up that, you know, the commissions would be a great source to bring in to help run these events. And so going forward, I'd like to come to each of your commissions at the start of the year in January, propose the events, exactly outline what is required or expected of them, and then really plan and get excited for what we have going forward. So the commissions feel like they're on board and have the opportunity to give their input, but also are willing to say, yes, I will be there.
I appreciate the orientation component of it. I think that's something that's been really missing from a lot of our commission activities, and so to have something kind of standardized, people are on board and understand what is expected of them. So I appreciate you taking that approach. I'm also wondering, with those existing commissioners, you know, sometimes they have their own expectations, having had already come in with, maybe it's the existing bylaws or whatever. How do you navigate that with some of the commissioners that may have some hesitations of these asks?
Yeah. I think that it's a conversation, and it's one that I'm actually really excited to have. I think that, you know, the commissions are groups of people that have already said, yes, we're committed to the city and we're passionate about these specific areas. You know, I'm not asking Parks to be excited about art. I'm asking the Parks Commission to be excited about parks, about getting people into green spaces and really enjoying what we have. So I think that framing it in a way that says, hey, you know, this is already an extension of what you're doing. It's just a different way to do it. And working with the challenges when they come.
Thanks.
I think you've done a fantastic job with your the communications you have through the city and what you've done with the city, coming to the events, representing everything, taking the time away to do that. I'm looking at some of these newer events that you're looking at, and I think these are fantastic. You're going to get some pushback. They're going to say, well, we've tried that. We've thought about that. And as I'm speaking about it, but I also see you, and I've seen your energy since you've been brought on to the team, I truly do believe that you will be able to have success with these, with the type of communication that you continue to drive with the city.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Great work. I got to watch you work at the Autumn Arts Festival, so that truly couldn't be happier. Two of the things I'd like to put on your radar that I was surprised weren't on here, and I'm going to need some help because I don't remember the name of one of them. But A is Crazy Days, and B, what was the volunteers called that used to go around and do all the flower boxes on Main Street?
Oh, it's the garden club.
Green Thumb, Green.
Yeah.
North St. Paul Green.
Yeah.
And if you choose to bring either of those back, please let me know. I'm happy to volunteer or do whatever I can to help.
No, that's great. I personally have not heard of these two events. If this is something that you're passionate about or interested in, I'd love to hear more about what that looks like. Obviously, this is the 2025 budget, so I don't, obviously, don't know if it's going to get put into this year, but I'd love to hear about them.
No, totally understand. You're hitting the ground running. Couldn't ask for more. Just two things to, put notes on, look into.
I will note
Jason
it.
does make a valid point with Crazy Days. I ran into some community members too, and this coincides with the the fall roundup parade that time of year, that they just had big festival, and it was something big in the city. So a lot of the older residents, have been longer term residents, I should say, are very much well aware of this. And I've been asked, why don't we have that anymore? So something to put on your radar for next year.
For sure. Sounds good.
And I'm sure we could probably get Sue Springborn. She's a gem. She's a city historian. She's awesome. She'd probably give you a little bit more insight. She's on Park and Rec. She's president of the History Center, right? Did I say that right? Historical, yeah. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you for all the hard work. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome
job.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ava. If you have any more questions on anything on these budgets, hopefully you don't. It's tough to follow that, and that's why I went first. But if you have any questions, certainly we'll try to answer those. We're all good? Oh, no.
Oh, you know I do. Well, I'm just curious, Liz, like we have discussed, well, I've brought it up a couple times on the revenue component of the community center. In the past, we've had different people who have occupied it for different activities, et cetera. It's covered some of our expenses. And as you had mentioned, we're kind of down to a situation where we don't have any revenue. But our residents are clearly still paying for it if we have to transfer $20,000 to cover that. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, what is feasible for us to kind of recapture some of that, because that revenue. Because I'd hate to, miss out on between $100,000 and $150,000 in there.
I'd be happy to jump in on that. And actually, I'd like to have you come up here, Ron, a little bit. So part of the issue was some of the equipment issues that we have in the building. Clearly we have an elevator, but if we even if we keep things on the first floor, many of the issues that we had were the heating units going out. You were responding to these at 50-some degrees when they were trying to play volleyball in there. Don't we have several pumps that are also very expensive that were either on their last leg or just plain not working now that helps heat the building itself?
Yes, right now, hi everyone.
Hi.
Hello. Yeah, there are 2 heat pumps that are in the ceilings that are out right now, and we haven't repaired them. We got by the cooling season. We could get by with that. It has more to do with the heat than the cooling. We're getting by now. We're going to see how it holds out. We haven't stuck the money into them. I believe one of them is $25,000, and I think one is $20,000. We're going to see how they do if it's unoccupied. The HVAC contractor thinks we can get by without anything freezing, but if it's occupied, he said we probably are gonna have to do something with those to make sure that it's comfortable or to keep up with the heating that we need there. The gym floor, there's some holes in the floors that we have to repair, or that, you know, so that could be usable. Like I said, the elevator is out of service. I mean, we have it off right now. And to fix that, it can be anywhere from $10,000 to $150,000 is with the range. I mean, it could be $10,000 for us to find out for sure what's wrong with it, you know, really what's wrong with it. So there are just a lot of things that we'd have to do just to make it habitable for people, you know, to be in. So, and we haven't done it because we've just been kind of waiting to see where things were going to go with it. So.
And the responsibility to anybody who would pay money to rent it there to try to keep it up. And if, I don't know, it was kind of where do we stop and start? I know a couple of you have mentioned about that. We have these things that are issues. Do we dump that money into it and do it? I'll take your guys' recommendation.
How is it that the library's in there and we're not fixing heat on the other side? Can you?
It's a totally separate system, because
it
that was
on,
an
yeah.
addition. It's a totally separate system that's on there. There's a separate system basically for the gym, and then so that takes care of the gym area. And then there's multiple boilers in there that have these heat pumps in there. And I'm not an expert on these, but there's like booster heat pumps that are throughout that building. And in kind of some of the, like the fireside room or the common areas out there, not the gym, that requires the boilers and the heat pumps. And I know a storage area off the gym and the offices up on the upper level are affected by these heat pumps that are out. So the gym can be taken care of with the 2 units that are on the top of that. The library is a standalone, basically, system for them.
That money that you put in now, if something does go forward, you don't get back, correct? So I don't know how,
Sorry, why is that?
because they don't reimburse you after the grant for the bills now. Do they?
Not
Correct.
spent before you receive it. No.
Right. So, so my question, I guess, is like, with all the assets that we have as a city, like when there's a need, do we make decisions not to fix things oftentimes? Like that's pretty common practice, you would say? Because like I feel like this is a community asset. The residents are still paying for it, but they're not really benefiting from it at all. And it's just sitting there not benefiting our community, even though it's highly desired. There are people who would use the gym, whatever. So I guess my question is, if it's already an asset within the community, within the city, why not care for it if it's a need right now?
Why keep kicking the can down the road and not fixing something so it continues to be broken and get broke more and more? So then we just kick the library out at some point and say, sorry, we can't have you anymore. Can't fix the roof, can't do this. I mean, at what point you just shut the whole building down? I mean, that's not what we're doing here. There was a majority vote that said, let's move on with the feasibility study, but we're not gonna fix anything in the building that's needs fixing, so we're gonna have pipes freeze this winter. I mean,
I don't think they said that, because if we keep it down, it's gonna.
No, and like I said, it's something where it can get by right now, but we're gonna have to see when winter comes where that is gonna be. And, you know, we have just been kind of following along to see what's gonna happen and where things are gonna go. I mean, it's not being utilized at all right now, so, you know, it was like, hey, if we're gonna stick $50,000 into here, I talk with both Brian and Dan when, you know, this stuff happens and say, hey, what do we want to do here? How do we want to move forward with this? So it's just been, I mean, yes, we definitely keep up on stuff. There's stuff that's gone bad on City Hall and on Public Works, and the stuff is taken care of because it's being used on a day-to-day basis. You know, I come in here at City Hall and people are wearing gloves because, you know, a boiler went out. You know, we fixed it as soon as we could, but it also, I mean, it comes back to, you know, with this year's budget, with doing the facilities assessment, you know, I keep going to Dan and Brian and saying, hey, there's another $28,000, there's another $30,000, and this was money that was never set aside in the past. And I don't like to spend that money that's not budgeted for, but I mean, people need heat, they need to be, you know, cool. Like I said, the last council meeting, the air conditioner was out up on the roof, and we went up there, and Randy and I put a new belt on there and just kind of figured it out and got it going. So I mean, we take care of stuff. I don't think it's fair to say that we're not taking care of a building that people are using. There's just no one in there, so I proceed with caution on spending money on that stuff when it goes out. You know, we have a conversation and say, hey, what should we do here? So.
Yeah, and I definitely appreciate all the work that you have done on that building. You've been on the roof in the middle of winter when it's freezing cold, just trying to patch the roof for the volleyball team. So I know that you've certainly been working very hard to keep the squirrels out, you know, among a ton of other things. I think, you know, it's very understandable that there would be hesitation around spending funds because there hasn't been a practice of doing a whole lot of maintenance around the community center, period. I think that's pretty understood over the history of the community center, and that's why it's in the condition it is in. Again, though, it comes down to why aren't we caring for our stuff, because it's still our responsibility to care for it. Even if it ends up the feasibility study is, okay, we have to sell the building, it's not going to really work out. You know, all these upgrades or whatever we have to do, that can be tacked on to a sale price as well. So, I mean, again, I just don't know why it couldn't be a benefit for the community when we're already paying for it.
Up to this point, there's been discussions both ways on whether or not this was going to move forward. So there are times that it was not definite that this was going to be something that we were going to move forward with. So it's moving forward with caution, I guess, to this point.
What would it take for the gym floor? Is that adhesive that's on the, does that have to be scraped up then too because of the pads?
Yeah, we'd probably have to do something with that. Adhesive is really on probably a third of the floor. The rest of the floor is just worn. It just worn from the sport court type product that was on top of it. You know, in that third of the floor that's got the adhesive on it, it's been filled in. There was walls in there. There was flowable floor leveler that was put in there. You know, so there's some plywood that's in there for the different remodels that have been done on, like I said, maybe a quarter to a third of that floor. That could be sectioned off at that point, you know, not to be used as, you know, it's not a full basketball court, but it could be sectioned off if we wanted to do something, you know, like that, to have some, you know, 3/4 of the gym floor operational, I guess, but I guess it would depend how we wanted to utilize it or what we were looking at, you know, for it, so.
How would that look for our liability with insurance and things like that? Is there any issues with that?
I would confirm that with Gary Insurance and call them about it.
I mean, for me, I understand the direction that Councilmember Wong is leaning. It's underutilized because it can't be utilized. It's not in condition enough for the building to be utilized we've had interest from outside sources look for, look to utilize the gym facility, et cetera. So are you recommending that we set aside additional funding, a lump dollar amount, towards repairing what's there so that it can be utilized? Is that, am I understanding you correctly?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's still being requested as a resource in the community. Again, if it's leasable, someone else has a sport court, whatever, then, that, again, it's trying to cover our costs that we are, again, paying for nothing in return, not even many social benefits. So to me, it's just a complete, we're just throwing money out the door.
I would support additional funding be set aside against getting some of these repairs up to date and making the building usable. I don't know what those dollars look like, but
When you say resource, do you mean talking for people to use it? Like how we staffing it? What kind of resources are you trying, what are you talking about as far as?
Like people wanting to use like the meeting space or like gym space. I think of it very similarly to like our park building, for example.
So you're talking
People rent
staffing
those
then?
out. We don't staff the park building though.
Well, we can't, the park, we don't let them in the building unless somebody rents it. This is completely
Right.
different.
Is
Are you talking about having residents be able to use it inside? Like go and play in the gym?
Yep. Yeah, people to use the space, they can rent the space, kind of a
Similar to
similar.
what Kokoro did, rent out the,
You're talking more of a company to rent out, not for residents to use. That's what I'm trying to get down here.
I mean, again, that's something to, explore as a model, but I think, like the two options that would be easiest, one is to lease it to somebody, or two, you can have it kind of open on a calendar like we do our other buildings and people rent it out that way. Again, it's just how do we make sure that this resource we have is cared for and it's used.
Anything? For myself, by the time you add that kind of money and what you're able to do with it, I think we just need to understand what the RFP does. So I think we should leave it closed.
and I guess I look at it too. We leave $97,000 on the table by not having the building up to speed to be able to utilize the space. So if it costs us 100 to get 97, we broke even. And then we've got a building and equipment that's up to speed where it should be. To talk about the expense and to not talk about the lost revenue is a disconnect. So that would be my recommendation. I don't know what the dollars would look like, but I would certainly entertain further conversation about spending some money so you don't have to spend January on the roof and do some of those types of things to get it up and see if we can, until we have feasibility study done, until we determine what it is, there's absolutely no reason if the few things aren't repaired, we couldn't have a tenant back in that building.
I don't disagree. We haven't, correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't rented it out at all this year.
Can't, it's not feasible.
Right. But we had revenue from last year with Kokoro specifically. They have a new facility. So it's lost revenue right now. We can't because, again, stuff isn't up to par. But like you just said, you get up to par, we'll maybe break even. We probably won't because then you have, your electric, all that cost going in there. But then we can continue to rent it out right now until we really do figure out what's going to happen.
We'll pull those numbers together. We'll get a complete list, bring it back to you.
Thank you.
Dan, while you're here, I do have one question on a different topic, unless anyone had anything more on that topic. Okay. The money for the McKnight Field, the $650,000, had that come before the council? Or is that, I wasn't sure where that was coming from.
It will be coming as part of the capital improvement plan, but it is incorporated into the budgets right now, which nothing has been approved, obviously, and won't be approved until December. So that's why the next meeting we'll look at the capital improvement plan, and that's where your input, your questions, they get finalized. If there's adjustments to that, and I'll just use it since you brought up the McKnight Field, if the decision were not to support that and to pull that out, then the budget would be adjusted to reflect that. But the same thing is that because the CIP is kind of the driver, we've heard on the community center that there's some items that would need to be repaired. We should incorporate that into the CIP that you see in the next meeting to be funded in 2025, and it's up to you to make the decision whether you want to move forward with that or not. But that's kind of how it would work. So it hasn't, nothing's been approved, and you'll see that with the CIP. You would have seen the CIP much earlier. We were waiting for both Parks and Rec Commission, and more importantly, for that facility assessment to get done, which just got completed not even about a little over a week ago.
Okay, it just seemed like a big line item to have no
Absolutely.
discussion and all of a sudden just be in a budget.
Yeah, so you'll see more of a discussion on the CIP itself. And again, any decisions off of that, everything else then gets adjusted accordingly on your discussions.
Anything else? If not, call for adjournment.
So moved.
So move. I don't know what.
Second.
So move, Wong, Cole. All those in favor say aye. Aye.